Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And Bill, boy, seems like there's a lot of conflicts going on that we probably ought to talk about that are in the news, in the last few days.
Yeah, I really appreciate the comment in the start, Tom, because, conflicts create tension, and the limbic part of the brain, the back part of our brain, is very interested in things that are dangerous, real or imagined. So if something is not as dangerous, the motivation drops a little bit. The urgency drops a little bit. It's sort of like, if there's not enough pressure, then we can't get people to do stuff. Meanwhile, if we foster a stronger relationship between the safekeeping part of our brain, the back part of our brain, and the forward thinking part of our brain, then we get better entrepreneurship. We get better growth. People get to have better communities. They get time off. They're rested a little bit more. There's not as much conflict. But Tom, there is a lot of profit in conflict. There's a lot of money that can be made by selling something and taking it away and telling the person that if you don't have this, you're going to be at loss. You are going to miss out. And that taps into that part of the brain. And what conflict does is it keeps loyalty close. I am buying and I'm investing in an upset. Now, the upset might not be real, but if it's an upset, then I can buy it because now I'm urgent, and this reminds me of the upset I had last week or last month, and I bought that too. So, but selling the danger and selling the upset, it eventually does not allow stability to take place. It doesn't allow, it doesn't cause a future. It's a very short-term mindset. If I get somebody worried or anxious about something, they'll purchase it, but they won't purchase it again. Or they'll buy and invest in it and then be empty. So if I sell a belief long enough and then take it away, well, what winds up happening is that I feel empty. So Tom, watch what happens when I say this next sentence. Our economy would really work best with trickle-down economics, where we make sure that the tax cuts takes place for the wealthy, and they're going to be the job creators. Oh, the job creators. I'm not a job creator. I'm a worker. I want the job creator to have as much money as possible. Even if the numbers are not really meeting the need for truth, the loyalty has been purchased away from truth because the conflict says and the belief says this is what's true because it's what's been sold or proposed or spoken as a truth. And if you say it long enough, and if you say it over a number of years, there's a certain group of voters that will walk down that path in order to buy or believe that thing. So this is really interesting because as the Republican Party goes into this next either evolution or de-evolution, because they're struggling right now between, are we going to take the salesman and the marketing person who has troubles with ethics, integrity, legal law things, are we going to stay with that? Or are we going to move ahead? So it's a good thing that McCarthy and Cheney are at odds. It's a good thing because it's creating an important tension in the Republican Party. The only question is that are they going to be able to nurture the stable version of Republicanism, or are they going to stay with the volatile version? Because if they stay with the volatile version, they're going to win a lot of local stuff. A lot of the local government and a lot of decisions are made at the local level anyways. It's not as flashy as winning, the White House and stuff, but they'll win at the local level. But they won't win major things, and they're not playing the long game. They're only going to play the short game. And so they've got to be something different. Does that make some sense? And does this definitely starts up our conversation today for sure.
Yeah, no, there are things that definitely make a lot of sense. What you're saying makes complete sense about the conflict keeping loyalty. I mean, I feel like we've been on that hamster wheel or merry-go-round for the last 4 years. I mean, there's one conflict after another came out of the White House, and I really think your major news media outlets also need to be included in this, like CNN and Fox. That conflict keeps eyeballs glued to their TV, through the day. So that helps them. And as the temperature comes down now, as we're in the Biden era, I think, TV ratings may be suffering, or you're going to see them creating more conflicts.
We're going to create the media will get on board to create the conflict because we don't have the commander in chief doing it for. He gave media the greatest gift ever by being the brander, marketer, salesperson he was, because he was always, agreeing to stuff that wasn't true. And then spinning or exaggerating about how he knew that this is an important thing. So I was watching a video clip of Seth Meyers last night, and he literally did a version of Joe Biden and then a version of Trump, how Trump would have dealt with the same press conference. And it was like, oh my gosh, it was really unsettling because it showed the dichotomy of somebody that communicated in a message of sales, marketing, and promotion versus somebody that was communicating from a place of leadership. And so the question came into Biden, do you agree with da, 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 da? He says, or do you wholeheartedly support? No, I wholeheartedly do not support what you just said. End of scene. There was no conflict. In other words, he's not going there. So anybody else is going to try to cross that line. But Trump would have taken that out for 2 or 3 weeks on whether or not he meant it or not. Or if he didn't know about the person, some people say Frederick Douglass is not getting the credit that he really needed to. And boy, people are now looking at Frederick Douglass in order as a significant person that's contributing. And everybody's going like, does he even know that Frederick Douglass is dead or not? I mean, the way he's talking about him is as if he's alive. And, is this an important thing that we need to follow? It's like, well, he was an important figure in, American history, but how was Trump promoting and selling and amplifying the person's question? He would do that daily on various different tweets and messages. Often sounds like once a week, right? It's like, no, it was a daily communication of, look at this shiny thing. This is my stance on this. This is my executive order. He, for the military over a tweet. Oh, and they were very often controversial statements that, of course, the White House press office would always try to spin it as, yeah, that's normal. Or that's, they would try to talk about it as if there's nothing controversial about it. The president would get everybody all riled up and draw a lot of attention and dominate the news cycle because it was controversial. Well,
So this is interesting. I want to find that Seth Meyers clip, by the way, and I'm going to put it in the blog post for this episode so that our listeners can go see that. So go to the blog post at purchasingtruth.com if you're listening to this, and you can check that out. But when, let's come back to, I think, the conflict that really dominated the news cycle, in the last day or two from when we're recording this. And that was that press conference from, minority, I forget his exact title, but the Minority Leader McCarthy and Liz Cheney from the House that were speaking, and they were asked about the upcoming CPAC conference and if Trump should speak at it. And McCarthy immediately said, yes, he should speak at it. Boom, like plain as day. Liz Cheney didn't give the same response. She said, well, it's up to CPAC who speaks, but basically she said, no, I'm on record saying I don't think that Donald Trump should be speaking for the party or really involved at the party, at this point, whatever. She gave what I think is a truthful statement.
The future of the party,
her opinion and her vision for the future of the party. But here's now this conflict, even between people within the Republican Party, within McCarthy and Cheney. And that's interesting, because when Biden's trying to have the country focus on healing and restoration through coronavirus relief, or getting his cabinet, nominees approved from the Senate, here's McCarthy and Cheney sucking a lot of oxygen out of the room and out of the news cycle over their struggle for control of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really disheartening. I mean, if you think about how far ahead other administrations would be, because of between the November election and the inauguration was when all of those hearings for the cabinet were to be held. And Mitch McConnell did not hold any of those. In fact, he even put aside the impeachment piece until after the inauguration, because then it gave the Republicans and him the get out of jail free card. I can't convict because it's after this, and this is the way I see the law reading from the Constitution. Meanwhile, it doesn't say any of that, and it's not in fully alignment with truth. And I am not saying a talking point. And because people will say, well, that's a talking point. No, that's partisan. It's not partisan. It says it right there. It's like,
well, not only that,
and
they voted
and it's been done before. And it's been done before.
Right.
That's a whole nother thing. It's like, well, it was done before. No one's given any pushback on it was done before. It's like, well, it was done before, but it seems like, he's, choosing to save or support his voters is what he's doing, or he's saving his votes here. He's saving his point of view. So anyways, the thing that because media, especially news media, and this is something I think that really we need to take a look at as a society, is that for news media to be demonetized and not be based on not be so needed for advertisement dollars. In other words, here's the news hour, and it is a news hour, and there's no ads in the news hour.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? Because honestly, I am one of those people, Bill, that I do like watching national news sort of daily. Okay. I have my news outlet that I listen to the national news program daily, but I hate watching it live. I try not to do it. I will watch it an hour later, sometime after it's done, so that it's recorded and I can zip through the commercials, because I'm so sick of all the pharmaceutical commercials and all of the legal disclaimer language. It's like, oh my gosh, just scare me away from ever wanting anything to do with this drug.
Yeah, I know.
So really that I don't enjoy that, but so to me, it would be a relief. And if we could have news be purely news without the need for revenue.
Very, very challenging. So we got a lot of problems because money's in the equation, and
It
and
is.
there's really great times when money belongs in the equation, and or certain types of ads or certain types of things. But the way it's really setting up is when you just let the market drive certain things, certain elements that the market really shouldn't drive. And one sentence I always like to say is that the things that society doesn't want to do or doesn't want to, everything is not to be built around capitalism for me. The things that we don't want a lot of, you sort of want government to run. Like, I would like the jails to be run by the government. Why? Because as soon as you take the profit out of it, basically somewhere between 1/3 to 2/3 of the people would not be spending as much time there because it's not cost effective. Right now it is.
Yeah.
It's cost effective to keep them there longer, which means that the management of the jail is, how can we keep these people here? Well, that's not a good setup, because then all of a sudden all you got to do is get somebody mad enough and, you got another 2 months on your sentence. You got another year on your sentence. You can't get them out. So
Bill, I feel the need to sort of raise a red flag here. Did you see in the news, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Illinois, one of the states in the union just passed a law that they're eliminating bail, the whole process of bail for people awaiting trial. Now, I don't know. I don't know enough about it as we're talking about this, and maybe it's something we can look at and talk about in the future, but
Sure.
I don't know enough to tell you what they've replaced it with or how they're making decisions on who that is accused of a crime is going to sit in jail awaiting trial and who is not. Because right now, again, talking about the money and the profit involved, they found that in this state, and others have been looking at it, but that in this state, that the money and the whole industry built around the bail system made it so that people that can afford to pay bail don't have to sit in jail awaiting trial. And they found 2/3 of the people occupying their jails are not convicted of a crime. They're awaiting trial and cannot afford the bail to be home. That was shocking to me to learn.
So 2 days ago, Illinois became the first state to eliminate cash bail. So, and I think that we can really talk about that because, it keeps poor people in jail for months waiting for things, and it's affecting the public, and it is once you start taking the profit out of stuff, people don't want as much of it. It's because, and if something that's running, a lot of people that are not really entrepreneurs, what they're interested in is, how can I monetize a system that's already running? So that's a part of the charter schools. Here's an education system that's running. Well, how about if we privatize this thing? Well, now all of a sudden you're going like, well, I'm not sure that driving the costs down on teachers and other things like that is going to really get you to have increased performance. All it's going to do is have a lot of really mess with communities and not necessarily have that stability, cohesiveness you would like inside a nation. We've got to figure out how to return to stability and consistency from a psychological place. This is a very psychologically dangerous time. It's very similar to, and to make a historical stretch, the fall of the Roman Empire. It's very unsettling, because you cannot destabilize a community or destabilize a city or a town with certain behaviors just so the needs of the few get met over the needs of the many. And it's really, 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 really hard. So anyways,
that didn't make me feel too good that we're feeling that we're maybe close to the end of the Roman Empire. Ouch. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's 100 years. We've got our military so big that it's not anytime soon, but we're already seeing signs of exploding from the inside out. And that's not the healthy stage of things. I want a viable, energetic Republican Party that actually does a good job at working with the ideas that are showing up. Either number one, they create themselves. Here's an idea about how to handle this issue. Or they work off a Democratic idea. Here's a Democratic idea. Here's how we can make it better. Here's the conservative view of that. And then things can go better. So, and we're just in a really, really precarious time because we're not in a healthy dialogue between two parties. We just aren't. And we've just got to do a way, way better job taking on a more of a value-based, more of a needs-based narrative that our leadership can be built around. And then our loyalty is to what fairness looks like, not to what party am I voting for. Our loyalty is, what does mutual respect look like? Well, if somebody calls somebody else a name, they're censured for 3 months. I'm making something up. But if you call somebody a name and you trash somebody and you're out of integrity, you've got to like hit the walk. We've got to have enough adult quality inside of us to say no. Here's a great example. In South Dakota, the attorney general got involved in a hit and run accident. I don't know enough of it, but basically he was driving down the road. He hit somebody and the guy died, but he hit him, drove away, came back the next day, thought he hit a deer. That's his story. Came back the next day and there was a guy that he hit was dead and died, and some guy he hit.
Wow.
He thought it was so, but the problem was the cover up and the stuff. So they're calling for his resignation. And that's an example of integrity. You hit something, you stop something, you call 911 right away, you fall on the sword early. This is what happened. I didn't see him. It was dark. Whatever the true story is. Now, if he had been drinking that night, or if there was, in other words, he might have had a motivation
to not do the right thing right then. He, presumably makes up the story that he thought it was a deer, and that's why he didn't stop, because he thought it was a deer. And now they'll never know if he was, impaired or not.
Compromised.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right. The unsettling part of this is that an adult narrative is to hold people accountable on a certain scale of things. The things that is being promoted right now is that you are not held accountable for the things you say and do. That's the current path that we're on. You don't have to be held accountable.
Boy, and Bill, doesn't that actually allow these conflicts to come up that are trying to keep loyalty? Just sort of to circle back and close the loop here, it seems to me, if we're not doing accountability and responsibility for what you say and what you do, a la Lindsey Graham, no, we're not gonna, vote on or have hearings on a Supreme Court justice in the last year of Trump's presidency. Oh yes, then we're going to do it. That if we're not going to do that accountability thing, the conflict itself is allowed to breathe.
That's right. It is. The conflicts are, and you're really allowed to have a very, very middle school mindset run the show. Middle school mindset is, I can wait out the teacher. I can wait out the authority, because there's no accountability, and there's nobody here that's strong enough to have the accountability. Even in schools, Tom, parents right now, if a teacher says or does something wrong, the teacher's out. The parents aren't coming in and supporting the teacher as much. They'll support the kid. That's not a bad thing. But what it is a thing that we need to have an adult to adult discussion, is saying, this person said this. What is the appropriate thing? What's the appropriate thing? Does the teacher lose their job because it hits these 7 criteria? Or is it, here's what the teacher is up against, and here's what we do to protect the teacher too? Now, there's certain things I'd fire a teacher and throw them in jail for sure.
Well, but there may be other things that don't rise to that level, and then the teacher needs some support and training then improve and you know, in the future.
That's right. And whether it's you and I as business owners who have to do that all the time. Oh, one of our employees made a mistake. We have to come in and rescue them with a client, as if you don't do that, you know, once a month maybe, or whatever.
Sure. No, that happens where I have to do something like that. And, you know, have I fired an employee over something that is serious enough? Yes, I have. And as a business owner, you have to make that hard choice and decision and act quickly. But would I rather, if it doesn't rise to the level of really firing, so would I rather turn that employee into a successful employee? Yes, I would. That's in my company's best interest, as long as what they've done doesn't cross that line.
Which is really where we can stick the landing here, Tom, is that conflict, you know, creating conflict to keep loyalty, but there's a relationship between the conflict and the loyalty is a mistake. It's not a mistake, but all of a sudden you help the employee out, you retrain them, the employee becomes more loyal because they see that you're working them through the issue. Well, if media participates in that, then they're creating a loyalty, but it could be a loyalty to a false narrative. And that's the thing that the danger that we're currently in right now, is that it's not real. It's more on the imagined truth than the real truth. So.
Well, and that's why we hear so many people playing to in our political leadership Washington, playing to a soundbite.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and we can pick up some of these things tomorrow, the next time. Okay.
All right, Bill. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thanks, everybody. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.